Welcome everyone to a Go Stadium video. I'm filling in for Blandon from formerly Elite Four TV, now with Go Stadium Elite. And this is the Go Stadium Elite Timeless Team Builder Guide. And this is the public version. There's also a Patreon-owned version that has many more Pokemon. This public version has 28 of the most meta Pokemon in Timeless, and the Patreon version has 100. The instructions are you're going to access the link that's going to be included in the description. You're going to use a Google account. You're going to go file, make a copy. You're going to open up that copy, and then you're going to be where I'm at right now. We're going to go to the data sheet, and essentially how it's listed off, there's 28 Pokemon in the public version, 100 in the Patreon version, and you'll see that these are the 28 most meta movesets and Pokemon according to the Go Stadium Analyst and Go Stadium Battle Coaches Elite. So some of the best minds in the world when it comes to Pokemon Go PvP have concentrated the meta to 28 Pokemon that they feel are pretty meta relevant, and for the most part I do agree. And so they have listed the Pokemon and the moveset. So in this case, Blastoise with Water Gun, Hydro Cannon, and Ice Beam. And they have all the 28 Pokemon. And then what they have here is they have Blastoise, Water Gun, Hydro Pump, and Hydro Cannon, and Ice Beam. And what they have is they've pulled the PvPoke score based off 5 different scenarios. The first one is 0 shield scenario. So obviously no shields, doing the charge move, and then they provide the PvPoke score. 1 shield, best case scenario. So that's, for example, you landing the bait and then hitting with the charge move that you want to hit. 1 shield, worst case scenario, they don't shield the bait or they block your stronger charge move. And then 2 shield, best case scenario, same thing. And then 2 shield, worst case scenario. So this gives kind of a range of all the possibilities that might happen in a particular matchup at neutral energy and at neutral HP. And then at the very bottom, it tells you the average score, or it tells you the score, then the average for each of the Pokemon. So we see that Blastoise has an average positive matchups of 15.2 out of 28. That's not bad. Slightly more than half the Pokemon it has a positive matchup. You're also going to see Dragonair obviously has a tremendously positive matchup at 19.8. That's actually kind of crazy. And you'll see that it really thrives when there are shields up, at least for this version. Dragon Breath, Return, and Aqua Tail. You're going to see Drapion, Frostlass, Haunter. You're going to see Kingdra. Again, that Dragon Breath damage, largely unresisted. Only in Polion resists Dragon Breath in the meta. And you're going to see, etc. Meganium, probably the safest starter to go with. You see Politoed, Quagsire, Mudboys doing really well. Shelgon, again, that Dragon Breath damage. You're going to see Swampert, again, another starter. You're going to see Venusaur, Victory Bell, and Wishcash. And you're going to see that they all perform pretty well, and this is a very interesting spreadsheet to take a look at and to try to understand. You're going to see Lapras here at 17, and yeah, just pretty interesting spreadsheet. And I'll show you an example of like where best case and worst case situations really matter. So for example, if we go to Drapion, in the best case scenario, you end up in a CMP tie in the 1 shield, and that's basically drawing. Basically what you're doing there is you're going to be baiting with Dragon Claw and then landing the Blast Burn in a CMP tie. But in the worst case scenario, where they don't fall for the Dragon Claw bait or they block the Blast Burn, then you're going to end up in a losing matchup. So that's very important to understand how these matchups can play out. Because when you do run the sim on PvPoke, and PvPoke's great, don't get me wrong, is that it does show you by default the baits landing successfully, so it might not show you the full range of what can happen in a matchup. So actually another example that I know fairly well, at least I'm going to test out to see if I know fairly well, is Meganium versus Victory Bell. So we go over to Meganium, and we're going to see for example, in Meganium, for the most part, beats Victory Bell, but Meganium has to land the Earthquake. while Victory Bell in the 2-shield scenario just has to land Leaf Blades. It doesn't even need to get to a Sludge Bomb. So you'll see that Meganium in the 2-shield matchup, best case, actually wins. But you'll see in the worst case scenario where an Earthquake gets blocked and they don't shield the Frenzy Plan, you end up in a really negative matchup. So that just tells you the range and how safe a particular matchup is for different Pokemon. So this is a classic matchup where on PvPoke, it shows Meganium like a pretty comfortable win, but it's actually a little bit more difficult because it has to land that higher energy charge move. But, that's just the data of it. You can go to the Trio Builder, and what you can do here is, one thing you can do is compare different types of, different Pokemon with similar roles or similar types. So, for example, a classic debate is Celio with Powder Snow, Body Slam, Aurora Beam versus Lapras. And then let's just go with another ice type. Looks like the Frostlass, for example. And you're going to see how these Pokemon cover different components of the meta. So you'll see that against Blaziken, Celio loses in all shield matchups in under neutral energy and neutral health, or neutral, like not neutral, zero energy and zero health. While Lapras has a chance to win in the no shields, and you'll see Frostlass ties in the zero shields. But effectively, for the most part, they lose pretty hard to Blaziken. But if you do want an ice type in the close scenario against Blaziken, then Lapras is going to be your best choice. But if we look at, in another one, we look at Charizard. Charizard does beat Celio in the 1-shield pretty clearly, but loses to Lapras, again, because of that surf damage. But let's go a little bit further down and see where Celio might be able to outshine against Lapras. So, pretty interesting here, actually. Lapras. Oh, okay, there you go. Lapras in the worst case scenario loses against Celio in the 1-shield, and then as well loses to Celio again. Well, it's going to be a much more even matchup against Lapras, obviously. Lapras versus Lapras. Let's see another example if we can find one where there's slight contrast. So, like, looks like Swampert, for example, in the 1-shield matchup, both in the best case and worst case scenario, Celio clearly beats Swampert, while Lapras actually loses in the worst case scenario where Swampert lands that Earthquake. So not a great situation for Lapras, but it just helps you like compare and contrast the ice waters, which are to be honest pretty similar in that matchup. But Celio does pick up in practice. I find Celio picks up the matchup against Lapras more often than not, because it becomes a much more complex matchup for Lapras than it is for Celio. But this allows you to just compare that. Another one we can do, for example, is Dragonair versus Kingdra versus Shelgon. And we can see that in the zero shield matchup, Kingdra is able to beat Blastoise, while Blastoise is able to beat Dragonair because it's able to land the Ice Beam, which would only be neutral to Kingdra. And as well, Kingdra just has better closing damage than compared to Dragonair. And you'll see that Blastoise also beats Shelgon. But if we go down to Victory Bell, for example, we see that Dragonair beats Victory Bell in all shield scenarios, while Victory Bell absolutely destroys Kingdra in all shield scenarios, just because it's that Razor Leaf damage is going to do more damage to Kingdra than it is to Dragonair because of the sub-water typing, which would make the Razor Leafs neutral. So you can take a look here. So it's just a good way to understand how you can compare Pokemon of similar types and how they play out in the matchups. You can also build trios. For example, I see that that Dragonair, if I'm going to lead with Dragonair, I'm going to see that Lapras, or include Dragonair in my team of 3, I'm going to see that Dragonair loses to Lapras, not surprisingly. And I know that, for example, Victory Bell beats Lapras. Okay, that's kind of cool. do any Pokemon beat both of them? Okay, I see Drapion beats both Dragonair and Victory Bell. Is there a way for me to shore up that particular weakness? Because if I see a Drapion, then I'm going to be in a lot of trouble, because that Ice Fang damage is going to do super effective damage to both Dragonair and to Victory Bell, and Victory Bell is going to have its Razor Leaf damage resisted. So I'm going to take a look, and if I go back to this first sheet, and I take a look at Drapion, for example, or I can look across this way, I see that Blaziken does quite well against it. I see that Frostlass does okay against it. Well, okay. I'm just gonna highlight this row here. I also see that Kingdra does pretty well against it. That makes sense. I might be tempted to go that double dragon route. I see that Lapras does quite well. I see Ninetales, Politoed. So that's kind of, you might be able to hone out to the ones that are actually on your team. So I'm going to pick Celio, for example. And I see that, okay, that's great. Now I've covered up that weakness. It's still a little concerning to have two Pokemon pretty weak to Drapion, but Celio does have a really positive matchup against the team. And what I'm looking for is there yellow across the board on any one particular line. Like what Pokemon would do really well against this entire team. And it actually doesn't look like it. It looks like Drapion's the major one that has like pretty significant, pretty deep yellow on two of them, but it doesn't look like any Pokemon actually ends up beating all three. So I feel pretty comfortable with that coverage. Dragonair, Victory Bell, and Celio. So that's great. This is a team that was already selected here, so we can see that, for example, this team has Charizard with Fire Spin, Blast Burn, and Dragon Claw. Dragonair with Dragon Breath, Return, and Aqua Tail. Lapras with Ice Shard, Surf, and Skull Bash. Victory Bell with Razor Leaf, Leaf Blade, and Acid Spray. Acid Spray's an interesting moveset. And then, for some reason, it also includes two other Dragonairs. Okay, let's round out this team. So what are we missing? So we have... we probably need... Let's put Celio. And I'm not going to be very exciting here, and I'm going to put Lapras. Oh, no, it already has Lapras, actually. Okay, no, I'm going to be... Let's see. Let's put something... let's put Skunk Tank. We need something that will deter grass types, because we do... Well, I guess we have Dragonair and Charizard, but let's include Skunk Tank anyways. And this will basically show you... over here, it shows you how many above greater than 1,500 do you have. So you can see here, it counts if this particular row, as you can see here, how many it has, and then how many actually ends up losing. So you can see against Blastoise, I'm not really that worried about. Okay, Blaziken has quite a few positive matchups against this team. So it picks up some situational wins against Charizard, picks up a lot of wins against Lapras, picks up a lot of wins against Victory Bell, Celio, Skunk Tank. So, okay, pretty concerning. Drapion also does pretty well against this team. Obviously, picks up a lot of matchups against Dragonair and Victory Bell, and then picks up some wins against Skunk Tank. So that might not be that great, and it's kind of neutral to Charizard, and then obviously Lapras and Celio beat it pretty significantly, so that might see something of to note. Oh, we see that Mercargo. Okay, who's ever going to rock a Mercargo will have a very positive matchup, absolutely destroy Charizard. Can beat Lapras in the 2-shield, will beat Celio because it does resist it. So we might want to change up some of our teams based off these scores and how comfortable we feel with it. So what we see, we pick up 416 wins, 376 losses, and 48 draws across the 28 Pokemon in the various shield scenarios. So you can adjust and adapt your team accordingly. We also need to take a look at opponent analysis. You cannot use this in a tournament because it does... well, I guess you can You can preload ones, like if you want to. In this case, there are like 4 or 5 that you can select. You can preload teams and take a look at the matchups, but you cannot adjust it when you're in a tournament. When you're in a Silph tournament, that is not allowed. Dynamic calculations are not allowed. But if you do pre-populate, like against generic teams, then this might be helpful. So, for example, this team has Blastoise, Celio, Magcargo, and remember, Magcargo is a little bit of a concern. Sudowoodo, Lapras, and Kingdra. So actually, we do pretty badly against this team. I'm not gonna lie. So we see at Blastoise, not really that much of a concern, as long as we don't get Charizard stuck with Blastoise, and then we're good. Okay, so more likely they're gonna focus on these last 4 Pokemon that have really great positive matchups against the entire meta. So if we take a look at Magcargo, for example, what actually beats Magcargo? Okay, Dragonair in the 0 and the 1 shield, Lapras in the 1 shield, Victory Bell, and then beats Celio and beats Skuntank. So, and we see that Skuntank doesn't really do that well against the bottom 4, which is what we're most concerned about. And we see that Celio does iffy, and Lapras does, I don't know, like slightly better or quite a bit better than Celio. At least has a chance against Magcargo. And then you'll see that Victory Bell actually does really well against this team. Actually only has 1 loss in all shield scenarios, and that's against Celio in the 0 shield scenario. So Victory Bell is going to be a safe switch against this team, because no matter what I switch in, so I can lead with something riskier that I think will potentially be trouble for my team, and then switch in with Victory Bell or lead with Victory Bell and win that lead matchup no matter if they switch in. So if they switch in to another Pokemon, as long as if I see, say for example, I'm leading with Victory Bell and I come across the Magcargo. Okay, so I come across the Magcargo. What can else beat the Magcargo? So I can see Dragonair beats the Magcargo. So if they come in with a Magcargo against my Victory Bell in the lead scenario, and they switch out to Celio, for example, because they realize that nothing against this team will do that great, so they switch into Celio. I don't need to switch out because I know I have coverage against Magcargo with Dragonair if it's in my trio, and I can take that into consideration and just win that matchup against Celio, because I might have Dragonair and I don't know why I would have Skuntank, but I might have Dragonair and Charizard, for example. Or let's say I do have Skuntank. Let's say I have Victory Bell, Dragonair, and Skuntank in my trio. Then I know that I don't need to switch out, because as long as I'm going to win switch advantage, which I should be able to against the Celio, then I don't need to worry about this Magcargo later on, because I can be paired up against the Dragonair, and likely you're going to come out with quite a bit of HP against the Celio. So that's how you might want to use it. You can also take a look at other teams. This is really good for practice to understand where you have some potential weaknesses, how you can shore up your team and adjust it. Then you can make notes here, understand like what are some of your team's weaknesses, what are some potential strong Pokemon against your team. Are there ways that you can sack switch or take advantage of a Pokemon that has a really positive matchup against one or two of your Pokemon, and then you can use that to farm up and then gain an advantage in the overall matchup. So that's all I'm going to cover here. There is the public and free version, so you can check it out. But if you do want to support Go Stadium and get access to the very best PvP services that they have available, definitely check out their Patreon. And thanks for having me, Go Stadium. Thanks, Blandon, for having me on this video, and hopefully everyone learned something and found it useful.